Welcome to the Fiscal Physical Podcast. Join us each week as we sit down with the founder of Alchemy Wealth Management and author of Your Fiscal Physical, Ryan Nelson. Tune in to gain valuable insights and practical tips as we simplify complex financial concepts into digestible lessons. From budgeting to retirement planning, this podcast is your go-to resource for mastering financial literacy.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the Fiscal Physical Podcast. My name is Aaron Hoisington, and I am joined by Ryan Nelson, as always, the founder of Alchemy Wealth Management. And, Ryan, I got to take a pause here. This is our 40th episode, my man. How you feeling about that?
Feel pretty good. Yeah, we're over the hill now, right?
Yes, I suppose so.
That's awesome.
We're halfway to death. But no, it's been a blast doing these, man, and I appreciate all the insight and knowledge you always share here, and want to thank all our listeners as well who are tuning in, and however small the listener number is, we're keeping it going, so that's good. But I really appreciate the opportunity to do these. I feel like I learn a lot, and if no one else is, at least I am. So selfishly, I enjoy that. So, but let's jump into this week's topic, man. We're going to talk about probate and wills. First thing I always want to say with this topic is, like, who's excited to die? Like, that's like I remember when you gave us like the proofreading of like your book specifically, and we all got together. We were at a sports bar, like hanging out or whatever, and you were asking, "Oh, what's your favorite part, or what topics do you want to talk about?" And I brought up, I was like, "Well, the end of your life, the end of the book, like the probate and wills, was super interesting to me because I'd never really thought about that, and I try not to think about that, but and I brought that up, and one of our buddies was like, I hated that part. And I was like, why? And he's like, I don't know, I don't want to think about that. And I was like, okay, well, understandable, but anyway, it's just a funny kind of thing that people have heard the term will quite a bit, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But the word probate gets thrown around, and it's one of those ones where I'm like, sure, whatever. I'm hoping you can kind of break this down for us here in a digestible way about what probate is, what wills are, and all that good stuff here. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Cool. Yeah. So let's start by again, this would be one of those topics where an estate planning attorney is going to be more knowledgeable than me. Mm-hmm. And if you're looking to maybe set up something like a will or a trust or somehow avoid probate, that's something you'd probably want to consult a good estate planning attorney for. So again, as always, don't take this as any advice, but certainly let's help educate you. Maybe the questions to ask now if you go hire an attorney or something. But so let's start with defining some of these terms. So a will is just kind of slang, really, for last will and testament. So when we're talking about a last will and testament, typically we'll just refer to it as a will. And it is a legal document that specifies how you want your assets and property to be distributed after you pass away. So a will, last will and testament, it's a legal document, specifies how you want your assets basically distributed after you pass.
Makes sense.
Cool. Yep. Yeah. Pretty simple, straightforward, give or take. Probate. So probate is the process that takes place after somebody passes away to distribute their property. So typically it involves the court, and they address a few different issues. But so again, that will is the legal document that specifies how you want your property to be distributed. Probate is the process that takes place after you pass to actually distribute that money, right? So when through the probate process, it goes to court, court will validate the will, and then they will identify the heirs. So basically where the money or assets should go. They appraise any property if needed. They pay out any debts that if the estate has debts, and then they will distribute the remaining property to those heirs. That's effectively the probate process in a nutshell. Way oversimplified, but
cool. And is there a specific court that does that, or is it? I don't know if you know that question, but or can it just be where I go and fight my traffic ticket? They also do probate like there.
Yeah, I think it is a specific court. I've never been to probate court myself, so I do not know which court that is personally. But yeah,
I would assume there's probably a specialty that they probably do because they're. But good, awesome. I love that being able to the will and testament, the legal document specifies probate, the actual legal process that that happens during that. So.
And so the way I sort of think about this stuff is, so again, a common question I get is, do I need a will? Right? Well, first of all, go consult your attorney.
Yes.
But, if you pass away, this is one way of thinking about this that I feel resonates with some people, is there is a plan for your assets. If you pass away, there is going to be a plan for how your assets get distributed. The state you live in sort of has a default plan set up for you. So you can either say, yeah, cool, I'm good with the default plan. I don't need a will. Whatever happens to me, I'll just let it all go through probate and just the courts will distribute it wherever it goes. I'm good with that, right? Or you can specify and set your own plan, and that's effectively what a will does, right? So either way, there's going to be a process that takes place, and there's going to be, like, if you think about that probate process, there was a step in there, identify the heirs, right? Yep. And then they need to distribute the property. So you can either just use the state's default system, or you can kind of create your own system and say, this is exactly where I want the money to go. Neither is necessarily right or wrong or bad or good. They're just different. But so as you're determining whether or not you want a will, that'd be a consideration. Like, do you want to have more control over this process after you pass? Do you want to be specific with what happens?
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah. And with that, we are located in the state of Nevada right now, as of recording this, I suppose. Can't see us going anywhere. But I don't know if you can talk a little bit about like what the process for Nevada would be, if you know that specific. Once again, we should probably consult a probate attorney.
Definitely. I mean, I can give you kind of high level. Most states work pretty similarly, where if you're married and you pass, the assets would go to your spouse, right? That makes sense, right? If you're not married, or if your spouse has passed as well, right, then typically it would go to your children. Again, I think that kind of makes sense, right? So kind of first stop is the spouse, second stop is the children. If you're not married and don't have children, then typically it would go up the family tree, if you will, so kind of think of it going to your spouse, then down the family tree to the kids, then back up the family tree to parents.
Right.
If you don't have any parents that are still living, then typically it would go to siblings.
Okay.
And then if you don't have any siblings, you'd go to closest relatives. So that's the most typical process that I see. So if we think about that, it would be spouse, then to kids, then to parents, then to siblings, then to closest relatives, which I think intuitively makes sense. In most people agree that's how they would want their assets distributed to their spouse. If not, if they don't have a spouse, then to their kids. If they don't have kids, to their parents. If they don't have parents, to their siblings. So it's not like it's an absurd process that the state takes. Usually it's a very reasonable process. There's lots of probate cases going and processing through this. It makes sense that it would be a reasonable process. But it is possible you could say, maybe it starts getting a little more complicated if you have multiple marriages, multiple kids, kids with different spouses. Maybe you have, you had a past spouse, kids with them, but now you have a current spouse, and that spouse maybe had kids before you. So now if you were to pass, your money would go to the spouse, and then if the spouse passes, it would go to her kids. Mm-hmm. But did you want any money to go to your kids? It does start to get, you can implement some family dynamics here that make this more complicated. And the state's default system may not actually get the money to where you want it to go, right? So there's certainly opportunity out there where you can make sure you specify exactly how you want this to play out.
I like it. I like it a lot, man. That's a really, really nice breakdown here. Normally we do we're going to do a personal section on this, but I just thought popped in my head here.
Yeah.
Do you have a will?
I do not. So if you when you look at in just because I don't,
sure,
you've heard the story about the cobbler's kid having no shoes, right?
Yes.
So just because I don't have a will doesn't mean somebody else shouldn't. But what I will tell you is again, as you're consulting with your estate planning attorney, so there's other ways to also determine where your assets go.
Okay.
So as you're setting up your accounts, you've probably heard of things like beneficiaries, right?
Sure.
So you can set your beneficiary on specific accounts, and then if anything were to happen to you, that particular account would go to the designated beneficiary, right? And so if you look at the way my assets are broken out, I do have transfer of death and beneficiaries set up for my accounts. And so my assets would be going to I'll put in air quotes, the right places.
Sure.
So that doesn't mean that maybe I shouldn't have a will above and beyond that, especially the state of Nevada honors, at least my understanding is they honor what's referred to as a holographic will, where you could just like handwrite your own will, sign it. I don't know, you'd need to do some research to figure out what all you need to put on this. But you can basically draft your own will. You wouldn't necessarily need to go to an attorney. And so they could be very, very cheap, very easy to do. And so, probably not a bad idea for everybody to have at least a holographic will.
Sure.
And then as things get more complex, have your attorney draft an actual will. And then if they get more complex, maybe even a trust, which we can touch on in additional episodes. But yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Good to know. Yeah, I was just purely curious if that was something that you had right now. But awesome, Ryan. Well, we're going to go ahead and pause here, and we'll be back on the other side with some actual personal stuff. So everybody hang tight with us.
And now, to put the personal in personal finance.
Welcome back to this side of the Fiscal Physical podcast. I am still here with Ryan, and we're gonna mix it up a little bit. Right, I would consider you a fan of sports.
Yeah.
Is that a reasonable conclusion to come to?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I love sports.
Yeah, as do I. It's one of my biggest joys. I was thinking about it the other day, and I was like, I really get a lot of joy from these. Like, I enjoy watching sports. I enjoy thinking about sports. I enjoy listening to podcasts about sports. So I want to give the listeners a little peek behind here about what would you say your favorite sports teams are? Any sport, whatever it might be.
Yeah, so I'd say by far my favorite sports team is the Green Bay Packers. They're far and away my favorite to follow. Mm-hmm. I do also really enjoy UNR, Nevada basketball, so I have season tickets to them. I have some. I split some season tickets with a couple of buddies at the Reno Aces, so a AAA baseball team here in town. So yeah, same as you. I love being in sporting arenas and like being live games. I think are so fun. Really, the team that I truly follow is the Green Bay Packers. Mm-hmm. At this point in time, at the time of this recording, or at the time of this airing, the Packers should be 4-0 by now.
Hopefully.
So, but they're really the only team I really follow. I like the NFL, but really I can name like every single player on the Packers. Yeah. I can name like 2 players on every other team.
Sure.
So definitely more of a fan of the team than the sport, if you will.
Yeah.
And then, UNR basketball, I love that as well. But what about yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question. I was thinking about this one today, and I was like, I'm also a huge fan of the NFL. I love college basketball as well. I love college football. Like I enjoy. I think I love live sporting events. Going to something live. There's
the stadiums are awesome.
The stadiums are awesome. The experience is awesome. Everything, the energy that you can kind of feel just palpitating throughout the arena is just, even if you have tickets in the nosebleeds, you're still like getting that full experience. And so I was thinking about it, and I mean, I grew up like a big Washington State University football fan. My dad and I would go to the games all the time. So I'd probably, if I had to pick a favorite team, I'd probably go with that. But honestly, you could throw it in a Division II game, and I'd be like, it's here, like awesome, like, and I, if I had to, like, I'm also a big Seattle Mariners baseball fan. Yeah, love that, but I just love live baseball too. I've gone to a game or two with you, like your season tickets, and that's just unlike any other event. Like, you get right up close and personal with those people, like, and you're literally separated by like a net between that and then the ball. So it's fun, man. It's an interesting. I love sports just in general, but you're also, if I'm not mistaken, a partial owner of the Green Bay Packers.
That's right.
Yeah,
good reminder.
Yeah, good. He's got a lot of assets. This one for sure. So awesome, Ryan. Well, appreciate you sharing, man. As always, we'll go ahead and pause here and thank our listeners, and we'll be back next week, and we'll dive into some more topics that hopefully bring you guys a little bit of more of financial literacy. And I'll turn it over to you, Ryan, to end us here.
As always, stay the course.
Thank you for joining us for the Fiscal Physical Podcast. Until next time, happy listening, and as always, stay the course. If you have a question or topic suggestions, please email us at podcast@alchemywealth.com. If you enjoyed today's discussion, subscribe to the podcast to ensure you never miss an episode, and consider leaving us a rating and review on your favorite platform. This helps other listeners like you find the show. For more resources, you can visit Alchemy Wealth Management's website at www.alchemywealth.com or find your Fiscal Physical, the book, on Amazon. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention that personal finance is just that, personal. Please don't take anything we say as advice. The preceding content is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It's not an offer or a solicitation, nor should it be construed or relied upon for tax, legal, or investment advice. It doesn't consider your personal financial situation or objectives and may not be suitable for you.